Welcome back to the Beaver Banter podcast for the first one of the 2024-25 athletics season. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Ian Rivers. Ian, I know we did an emergency podcast about a month ago, and Trent Singer and of course Jared Robedo jumped on and talked, and those guys were great. But here we go. This is our first official podcast of the year. How are we feeling?
Feeling good, feeling ready, jazzed up to see some more Beaver athletics. Fall season is always one of the more fun ones around campus here at BSU. So I'm really excited to get into a little bit of a season preview today and what we kind of expect out of all these teams.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're back for another season, which means we took a break. And this is our entering season number 3 of the Beaver Banter podcast, which is crazy to feel. Feels like we just started this thing back up again, or just started it up in the fall of 22. For those who don't know, me and Ian, I've been doing this podcast, like we said, for this our 3rd season now of doing this. We had a radio show back when we were both students on campus called R&B Sports Talk, and we talked about the Beavers. We also talked about a couple other different things. We wanted to bring a podcast back to bring some attention to Bemidji State and the athletics, and just kind of have a place for people to go to consume more Bemidji State sports after the games are done. And that's been really, really fun. So as we get ready to start this up again, Ian, you do anything over the summer? How any kind of big things that stuck out to you?
Nothing super massive this summer, to be honest. Just working on some house projects. As listeners of the pod from last season will know, we just moved in about a year ago at this point. So just been grinding through projects. Just put a new door on the house this last weekend. That took way longer than expected. Of course it did, but nothing major over the course of the summer. Just kind of living life, trying to enjoy it the best I can, especially, it makes it hard when there's no Beaver sports to watch. What are you supposed to do with your time?
Exactly. What are you supposed to do with your weekends if you're not trying to watch a hockey game on a Saturday night? I mean, come on, you're supposed to spend it at the lake around a campfire with loved ones? No.
Sounds
you
spend
awful. You spend it in a recliner, secluded in the corner of your house, and you're just going another under 2-minute goal if this was a couple seasons ago. Anyway, yeah.
What about yourself, CJ? You do anything fun?
Nothing super life-changing except for the fact of, me and my wife welcomed our first kid in, which was really, really cool. That was around the time when our podcast ended for the season back in May, early May, late April. I think late April is when we ended the podcast, and about middle of May, we welcomed him in, and then 2 days later, the Timberwolves won Game 7 of the Nuggets series, and I thought, whoa, this is we're going to be my kid is going to have a golden era of Minnesota sports, and then followed it up with just complete gut-wrenching heartbreak. But that's beside the point. It's been a really busy summer, and trying to adjust my schedule with that has been a lot, as anybody with kids can tell you. But also just taking on some other responsibilities in my other job, sports director at the radio station I work for full-time. I'm actually going to be doing some play-by-play on Sunday for the state amateur baseball tournament. I went last Sunday in Belle Plaine for the Perham Pirates. I'm going to be going down this Sunday for the New York Mills Millers. And why is that really important for this podcast? Well, they're going to be playing the Bemidji Blue Ox, which I think is pretty darn cool. So that'll be fascinating. I like how, the towns are probably 2 hours away from each other, but they're all going to go all the way down to Belle Plaine, south of Shakopee, to go play a game, which is going to be, it's a great ball field, great ballpark, but logistically, couldn't you have met in Park Rapids or something and played? Wouldn't that have just been a little, easier? But it's the spectacle of it. I get it. But still, that's beside the point. That's pretty much what I've been doing. I did get the opportunity to drive through some town called Maple Lake or something like that. I don't know. That was really confused by the giant hometown of Ian Rivers sign that was on there.
Yeah. Got out of there, like I said, a year ago. So no longer in residency, but we didn't move too far away, just about 6 or 7 miles down the road in bigger, greener pastures in Buffalo, Minnesota now. So doxing myself. Thank you, CJ, for that. I will keep your address off the internet. But yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't say where
Maple
you
Lake,
were living. I said where you used to live.
no, yeah. Well, and it's not a very big town. So, if you can find your way to Maple Lake, you can probably find your way to family members of mine. So
In
we'll hope
Bertha,
that
Minnesota, you
nobody.
just bump into somebody where at. Like, you just bump
Yeah.
into somebody like, yeah, that guy, CJ, screw that guy. Keep him away from me. Yeah,
Yeah.
he lives over there. Go get him.
Bertha is the pinnacle of high society in this state. I've been there twice in my life, and it's never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, I made you go there once, so that helped.
Yep.
I pulled you into high society, and then I pulled you to the Clarissa Ballroom, which, just
Funny enough, it was my second time there because my in-laws, who live in the same area as you, also had their wedding reception there. So 4 or 5 years earlier, I was in there. I recognized the scenery all too well.
it was just flashbacks you were getting. Anyway, so now I currently live in between both of those towns in Eagle Bend. So there you go. We're both there. Come find us. Come get us. I don't know. Somebody on like the what do we want to say? Like the Mankato equivalent or the UND equivalent, UMD, either one equivalent of this podcast.
We might honestly have one BSU young boy that might try to do some damage himself. This might be domestic that we're talking about here.
He might be showing up at your house. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Go ahead, try it, Chase.
All good, Chase. But okay, back to Bemidji State sports. Here we go. We're into the athletics season, and let's start off with football because I think that's the big thing. I mean, everybody, the short story in volleyball, we hope they take a step up. And we'll talk more about that when we get in depth. Women's soccer, I mean, we expect them to just keep doing what they keep doing and competing for the NSIC title, making NCAA tournaments and winning games once they get there. And again, we'll talk more in depth about those. But I think the real fascinating story on campus for Bemidji State in 2024, at least in the fall, is going to be the football team. Because, I mean, let's be honest, they have a good defense. And they have Marcus Hansen returning NSIC Defensive Player of the Year. That's going to be big. We know that they have some good linemen. But really, what this is all going to fall on is the quarterback position. Brandon Alt, I mean, we've talked to Jordan Hine, who was the quarterback before him, and we've talked to teammates who've played with him, and they all call him the GOAT for a reason. That guy was the best quarterback to ever put on pads and a helmet for Bemidji State University. And that's cool to say in the moment, and he's earned every bit of that, and we can talk later about the things he's done on a professional level since leaving Bemidji State, but also that means that's the biggest pair of shoes that a quarterback has ever had to fill. And that's going to be intriguing. And we don't quite know, again, because it's college football, things can get kind of tight-lipped, on on who's going to be starting, who's the incumbent, who's this, who's that. But Ian, I think the big question is just, what are they going to do at quarterback?
Honestly, I would guess that they're going to start the season off with Sam McGath, who has the most experience in that quarterback room. He's been around and been playing for a while. He's taken quite a few snaps, especially over the last couple of seasons. When
he's had like its own special package down at the goal line.
Yeah, they have the McGath package. He's kind of the wildcat kind of guy, and he's taken a lot of snaps just because the Beavers have been good offensively, and they get out to a lot of big leads over the last couple of seasons. And he's had to come in and play some second halves before. And I think just based off of the fact that he was named one of the team captains last week or a few weeks ago, that leads me to believe that they're going to probably give Sam the nod to start the season. Is complete speculation just based off of my best guess. But and we'll see where it goes. And I think that Sam has showed that he's very capable of running the offense to the same heights as Brandon Alt. Probably not, but we'll see. I'm not unhappy with him. And I know that they've had some good recruits that they've brought in over the last couple of seasons. There's going to be some young guys that are chomping at the bit. If he gives them a little window, they might try to wiggle in there and make some noise and try to steal that job away. So he's probably going to have the job to start the season, but from there, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and looking at Bemidji State's quarterback roster, so I have this pulled up. If you're watching on YouTube, go do that. Or if you're listening, hey, we appreciate you listening on our podcast platforms. But if you go to the Beaver Banter YouTube page, you can see we have pulled up here this isn't a depth chart. This is just the roster of the Bemidji State football team. And we have it filtered through the quarterbacks. The only senior, the only upperclassman, if you will, is Sam McGath, senior, Brookfield, Wisconsin. And then there's a redshirt sophomore from Morris, Illinois, Zach Romack. Sorry for the mispronunciation. You have a redshirt freshman quarterback from Fort Dodge, Iowa, Connor Carver. You also have a couple true freshmen in Caleb Thinnison from Cokato and Bart Mackinick from Mankato West. And those are true freshmen. Thinston is 17B, where Sam McGath is 17. So, that probably spells a red shirt, or at least, you can't have two offensive players with the same number. So that obviously, true freshmen are not typically going to get playing time. But if you limit it to the redshirt sophomore, redshirt freshmen, you do have Zach Romack and Connor Carver. And again, does Sam McGath get that nod? Probably. Like you talked about, he's had run as the starting quarterback, or at least run in with the ones as quarterback. He's had his own packages. He's done some stuff. The biggest testament will be with McGath is the throwing, because he's great as a runner. He's great at getting the ball and putting the shoulder down and doing that stuff. It'll just be the passing game, because I think, and I'm not saying he can't do it. I have no idea. We just haven't really seen it, because his package has been get in the goal line, get that direct snap, and barrel in. We just haven't seen him in an opportunity to do some of this, not just passing, because he's done some passes, I'm sure, in the goal line, and they have some stuff, but actual, like, you're on the opposing, or you're on your own 40-yard line, it's 3rd and 12. Can you fire a pass in there? We haven't seen that yet, which is just why I'm intrigued as to what this starting quarterback competition could look like, and really just what that Bemidji State offense is going to look like on football, or on the field for football, because, they're a team with Brandon Alt, obviously. Spread them out, pass the ball everywhere, throw it around. You do run, don't get me wrong, but you're running to set up, or, you're passing to set up the run. You're a pass first team, but also this is a team, with Bolte, that has a good defense right now. If you feel confident in your running backs and the big boys up front, maybe do lean more into being a run first team, but that's not what Bemidji State was, even back to Jordan Hine, who I think was he could pass, don't get me wrong, but his best strength was being an athlete and getting the ball and running around and making some plays. And I wonder, does that, again, Jordan Hine was the second best quarterback in Bemidji State history, and the best one until Alt showed up. So I'm not trying to say, do you go backwards, but do you go back to a similar style like that, where it's not so much deep downfield passing, but it's maybe more the quick hitters, hard play action? Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying, Ian?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that at this point, you've seen enough good quarterback play come through Bemidji State University that these guys that are getting recruited, they understand what it's going to be like. They know that they're, potentially top end Division II quarterback talent, and it's arm talent. They want arm talent. They don't want to be, I can't remember what his first name is, Kyle Waljasper over there in Duluth, who, throws for 1,500 yards a season and runs for 2,000 and calls himself a quarterback. We have some good arm talent here. And I think that Sam, like you said, maybe doesn't have the arm talent that Brandon Alt had. Maybe he comes out and shuts us up this year and has a phenomenal senior season. We'll see. You mentioned the play style of Jordan Hine. I like to compare his play style a little bit to like Josh Allen, where, I don't know if the turnovers were necessarily as bad as Allen, but he's got that same, he's very good with his arm, but he also just loves to take off and run. Jordan Hine was never somebody that I thought twice about tucking and running whenever there was a little bit of a lane. And I almost looked more at like a Herbert, where he could run. Like, we saw him get out and run, but he doesn't want to do it. That's not what he wants to do. He just wants to throw. He wants to sit in the pocket, and they had a pretty good offensive line that let him do that. So yeah, in terms of play styles, I saw you smirking there, CJ. But
well, I mean, if you call him Herbert, that's some high praise from you. Ian.
Hey, I mean, he deserves it. He was a pretty good quarterback for the Beavers there. And those are two of the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL right there that I just name dropped. So yeah, I mean,
Chargers fans he's got to sneak in that Chargers propaganda on this program.
Okay. Anyways, Yeah, I think you brought up the run game, which is a very big thing. They're going to have to be better this year than they were last year. I don't think that they've been particularly great on the ground over the last couple seasons. I don't think they need to be, Baltimore Ravens esque in terms of running
They
the
don't need to
football.
try and be UMD or anything. Like they don't.
Right. Like they just need to have a competent ground game that can break off big gains when they need it and maybe just be a little bit more consistent than they were last year because we had some good running games last year. We saw it. But there were some games where you felt like, if we could have averaged another yard per carry, the game would have looked very, very different. So the offense, yeah, is going to be a big key to watch. Like you said about the defense, they're still going to be good. And I brought this up last year at many different points. I think that this team is set up to succeed post Brandon Alt era. And I think that that's something that I would have been concerned about a couple years ago when this defense was letting up, what was it, 28 points per game or whatever. Last season, I think they had the top defense or one of the top two maybe in terms of points per game allowed. So really good defense, and they're returning a lot of key players, Marcus Hansen being one of them on the defensive line there. So I think the defense is going to be really, really good, and they have a game against Michigan Tech to start the season. I think that that's a doable game, especially at home. A little bit easier than a couple seasons ago when they just jumped into Mankato straight off the bat. Get a little bit of a, you got to take them serious. But I can't remember what they were last year. Something like 5-5 or 6-5 or something like that at Michigan Tech. I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But I think they're more of a, prior to last season, like Moorhead or something like that. Obviously, Moorhead getting a little scary now. But yeah, I think that's about what I expect out of Michigan Tech.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the fact that Bemidji State is like you talk about being set up for life after Brandon Alt, which of course it's college football. You have to be set up for life around after a particular player. And what was fascinating is a week ago on the 12th, Bemidji State was at number 25 in the AFCA preseason coaches poll. And now as we get ready, I think technically is this technically week 0, I think, in college football? I think that applies to Division 2 as well.
Yeah, I think so.
So looking as we get into week 0 for the college football season, the D2football.com top 25 poll has been released. And would you looky here, Ian, Bemidji State ranked 20th in the country on this preseason poll. You can find the article that kind of breaks it all down here at bsubeavers.com. They always do a great job putting up Bemidji State content. But looking at the list on the D2football.com preseason poll, the NSIC teams that make their way in here, you have Minnesota State at 11 and Bemidji State at 20, Augustana at 21, Minnesota Duluth at 25. So again, we talk about the big question mark and how this is going to look offensively for Bemidji State. And it is there's a lot of volatility that can come in this quarterback post Alt, because if you have the wrong one or one that doesn't do a good job, obviously not the same as Alt, it can tank your season. But also this team is still really good. And according to D2football.com, the second best team in the NSIC.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is they got third in the preseason rankings for NSIC, I believe is what it was. Or no, it was all the way down at 5th for football.
It was 5th. I'll pull it up to double check, but
which I was a little bit shocked by, to be honest. Well, on one hand, I was shocked by it. On the other hand, they just lost one of the most talented quarterbacks in school history. So it's like you're going to bring in some doubt there when you lose a guy like Alt, especially offensively, where I don't really think that they looked super duper consistent last year. They had some iffy games offensively last season. So I think 5th, it's fair. They did get a first place vote, so we'll see. I expect them to be somewhere in that top 3 like they've kind of been over the last couple of seasons. Last year, finished tied for 2nd. Of course, that game against Augustana really is what came down to it. If they win that, they win the conference outright. They stumbled on the last week of the season there, but still had a great season, of course. But yeah, I think that outlook for this year is honestly, I could see this team winning really anywhere from, I mean, I guess a low end estimate, I could see a world where they win 7 games. This is a tough schedule that they've got, and maybe the transition isn't quite as easy offensively as they hope it can be. I remember when we were covering them back on campus, they had a season where they were playing wide receivers at quarterback because there was so many injuries to that
Right, because
room. So
Brandon Alt got
obviously,
hurt that season. Yeah. And then the
yes,
backup quarterback behind him got hurt. And then
yeah.
it
So
was just kind
anything
of a
can really
slog to the end.
happen. But I think anywhere from 7 to 10 wins is a realistic expectation for this team to have this season. If things go well and the defense continues to play as good as they have been, and the offense really doesn't regress all that much, then I think that this is very realistic to look back. And obviously, last season, 8-2, they only played 10 games because they didn't have that bye week, or they did have a bye week. They didn't schedule a non-conference opponent this season. They have Michigan Tech. So, yeah, 7 to 10 wins. That's kind of what my expectations are. I'll narrow that down a little bit as I see them play a couple games, and really what I expect this team to do. But yeah, I think anywhere from first to fourth in the conference is wide open for this team.
Yeah, it's all in play. And of course, if you look at the preseason coaches poll, Minnesota Duluth picked first, Augustana second, Minnesota State third, Wayne State fourth, Bemidji State fifth, MSU Moorhead right behind them, Winona State at 7, Sioux Falls at 8, Northern State at 9, Concordia St. Paul 10, Southwest Minnesota State at 11, Minot State at 12, UMary at 13th, which for Concordia St. Paul the last couple of years, for them to be 10th is interesting. And for Southwest to be as low as they are is interesting to me. But also, I don't know, it's the bottom of the conference. It's kind of, maybe a little interchangeable there. But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how this race goes. And I know we'll talk more about Michigan Tech specifically next week when we try and break down the lead up to that game and the first game of the season. But I mean, overall, it's just going to be fascinating with this team because, again, yeah, like you said, the transition maybe by the end of the season, we're like, yep, they got their quarterback set, whether it's McGath or whether it's whoever, like they figured it out. But then, if you stumble in the first few weeks, that's enough to, where this team wants to be historically has been in the Division II playoffs. And, just with football, you have so little margin for error, as we talked about. You just can't allow yourself sometimes because, again, you play Michigan Tech right away, but then you go to Mankato. You play SMSU, okay? But then you go to Sioux Falls, which is always a pesky team to play. You play Mary, then you go to Northern. That's going to be a tough game, as always. You got to go down to Winona this year, and you have to go to Moorhead, and then you finish the season hosting Augustana. So it's not like before where it's like, boom, Mankato, boom, Augustana. But still, I mean, if you slip up and say lose to a USF, it means you have to beat Augustana. Not, well, you can lose to Augustana and still have a chance. Like, there's just a little margin for error. This conference is good, especially in the middle to top. And again, you just got to make sure that you're on that A game. Now, luckily, you have that Michigan Tech game to kind of figure some things out. But also, again, if you stumble against Minnesota State, whatever, but then if you stumble against Southwest, then it's hard to pick it up there, or Sioux Falls or Mary. It's just by the end of the year, it's going to all factor in. And again, that's looking past and maybe being a little too alarmist, but that's just kind of setting the stage for what this season is. Because again, the expectations are high. This is a team that, even with a new starting quarterback, even with turnover at other positions, as you do in college football, they still expect to have a good team and a team that's going to be at the top of the NSIC and competing for a playoff spot.
100%. Yeah, you said it well. The end of the schedule here is absolutely brutal. At Winona, home against Wayne State, at MSU Moorhead, and then home against Augustana. That is a brutal 4-game stretch.
The final month
to end that season on. But yeah, they'll have some time in the middle of it against opponents, at least last year, that weren't necessarily as strong. But yeah, I think overall season preview pretty good. Outlook positive. I think that this team has showed over the last, I mean, it's been building. It's kind of been a slow build. And over the last, couple of seasons, it's maybe plateaued a little bit. They have won a playoff game in like 3 straight seasons now, or 2.
3. Yeah, they have not lost an
3.
opening round playoff
Yes.
game. Yeah.
Beat Augustana, beat Winona, and beat
Uh,
Texas UT Permian Basin, I believe it was
yes.
last
Yep.
season. So yeah, 3 straight seasons with a playoff victory. So in a way they've plateaued, but at the same time they've also made improvements over those seasons in terms of seeding or in terms of hosting a second round playoff game. They've still been going up, but let's see what they can do this year. I'm very excited for the first time since we've been seriously covering this team. It's kind of uncharted territory. So I'm excited to see what they can do.
Right, exactly. And I think we pretty much have covered all of our bases for the football preview. We're kind of in the season broadly. We'll talk about the first game of the season against Michigan Tech when that gets closer. All we're excited about is just another reason another opportunity to beat Michigan Tech, if you will. So we are very ecstatic for that, Ian.
Yes, sir.
Very ecstatic.
Can't wait.
There we go. There we go. So moving on, let's switch things over to women's soccer as we get ready for that season to kick off. Ian, again, we talked about the expectations and we've kind of gotten used to success with the women's soccer team and making NCAA tournaments, winning NCAA tournament or NSIC tournaments, I should say. We expecting the same thing this year?
Yeah, I think more of the same from this team is about what you expect. A top 4 finish in the NSIC, followed up with some decent tournament success. I think they've won either the regular season or the tournament championship for the last 3 or 4 straight seasons here. So it's been, and they, again, just like football, they've been winning playoff games successively. It's been a slow build for them as well. Back when we were on campus towards the end there, they were starting to I remember they went on that huge win streak that one season. They were up ranked as high as 5th in the country at one point, and then kind of stumbled at the end of the season, failed to win a tournament game, but now they've been winning tournament games. A couple seasons ago, they were in the quarterfinal, 1 game away from the Final Four, the semifinals, national semifinals. So it's yeah, I expect more of the same from this team. Last season, I think all things considered was kind of a down year for women's soccer. They really had some stretches in the middle of the season where it was we might not be making the tournament this year. And realistically, had they not kind of gone on that miraculous run towards the end of the season, they probably wouldn't have either way. So I think it was a really good way to save face. So hopefully this year they can come out and play a little bit more consistently and have a little bit more success from the jump rather than having to kind of claw their way back towards the end of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at where Bemidji State is expected to finish in women's soccer in the NSIC in 2024, 3rd on the coaches poll. They were 9 points behind St. Cloud State, which was picked to finish 2nd. They had 4 first place votes. Minnesota State had 186 points in the coaches poll. They had 10 of the 15 first place votes in this conference. Mary comfortably behind Bemidji State at 151, then Augustana 147, Concordia St. Paul 137, Northern State 129, and then a big drop off there to Minnesota Duluth at 97, and then it kind of goes down from there. But really, it's another 3-team race between Minnesota State, St. Cloud State, and Bemidji State for the top of the NSIC in women's soccer.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, hang too much on a preseason poll. I'd like to see what the preseason poll looked like last year because Northern State, to me, kind of came out of nowhere. I remember they finished 3rd in the conference, and I'm sure they were not predicted to finish there. So obviously you gotta play the games. That's why you play them. But at the end of the day, I remember being a little bit upset and offended when I saw 3rd place for the BSU soccer team. But then I sat back and thought about the fact that, last season was a little bit of they finished.
It was a little bit of a ride.
They finished 4th. So this is honest. This is a bump in terms of where they finished last season and getting up now into the top 3. I do expect them to contend again for an NSIC soccer championship, regular season title, whatever you want to call it. At the very least, I think the expectation should be top four, and not only making the playoffs, but how do we get a home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs, just like we did last season. Because if you remember correctly, I believe the soccer standings were very, very tight at the end of the season.
They
Beavers
were.
finished with 25 points in fourth place. 23, 23, 22, and 20 was the four teams behind them. So it was a tight race. I remember watching the final day of the season, and the games were all kind of staggered over a course of like 4 hours of start times. And the Beavers kind of got like every single game to go their way and get home field advantage in the first round. And then they upset Augustana. Very well, they didn't upset them. I mean, they upset them from the fact that they were trailing with like 3 minutes to go in the game, but they were the higher seed. So I'm excited. I'm always excited for women's soccer. Ever since Jim Stone got this program really rolling, it's been kind of don't look back. They've made the tournament now 6 times, maybe 5 or 6 over the last 6 or 7 years. Obviously, COVID, they didn't make it because there wasn't a season, and I think there was one other season in there that kind of breaks up their streak, but that was early on. I think it's like a 3 or 4 year streak at this point.
It's felt like every year since like 2018, 2017, somewhere in that stretch.
Yeah, they're either in it or they're in consideration for it. So it's been a good program, and hopefully they can continue success this season. Defensively, they've always been very, very good, very solid. And I expect, honestly, a lot of that to stay the same this season.
Right. And a little bit of women's soccer news. This was earlier in the month, and again on bsubeavers.com. But they did add an international goalkeeper, Sonia Alfieri, from Luxembourg, to the 2024 squad. And they also announced that Maria Stocky and Katrina Bartheld are captains for the Beavers. How are we feeling about that, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, that's 2 pretty good captains right there. Very, very good leaders for the team. They've been staples last year to the success of the team for sure. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff happening with women's soccer. Let's whip around on our preview coverage and talk a little volleyball for Bemidji State University. And again, that was a team that last year, again, we were like, can you just get improvement, and can you kind of get your program up into another tier of the NSIC? Because it's hard, man. The NSIC is, I've discussed this with other people, this is like the top volleyball conference in Division II. Like that, this is a solid volleyball conference, whether it's Winona or Mankato or there's just St. Cloud State. I mean, there's I believe, I can't remember about them, but I mean, there's so many good volleyball programs in the NSIC, and they're not just like good. They're like top 5 ranked in the country every single week, kind of good, multiple teams. So it makes it tough to break through in that conference. But I mean, overall, just I think we felt like at the end of the season, they were in consideration to get into the NSIC tournament. And I think the goal this year, if you're looking to take just a slight step up, is to somehow find your way to sneak in.
Yeah, they finished 11th last season, but they were only a couple games out of that. They finished 7-11 in the conference. And of course, 8th place was 9-9. I think they would have had to. I'm trying to look back at the schedule and see.
They kind of had a little tough time down the stretch.
Yeah, because they were right there for a while. And if you look towards the end of the season, I was kind of thinking like, all right, if we're anywhere close, our last 2 games are against Minot and Mary, 2 very beatable teams. And if it comes down to a tiebreaker, we might get in because, we've got those 2 games that we could very easily win at the end of the season. But yeah, before that, they went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 game losing streak across the NSIC, including some games against teams that were right around where you were in the standings. So you would have had to pick up, 1 or 2 of those in order to probably sneak in. But that's the best we've seen volleyball look in a long time. Getting 10 wins overall, 7 in the conference. I know we brought it up last year when they actually did it, but I can't remember what the year was, how long it's been since they've had that level of success getting to double-digit wins. But Yeah, hopefully they can use it as a season to build on, because we saw with softball, a couple seasons ago, they had a really good season. Last year kind of fell back down to earth a little bit. So we'll see. We're not here to preview softball right now. That's still a ways out, but we'll see if softball can use any of that future past success to kind of still keep building. One rough season in the middle of a rebuild isn't necessarily the end of the world, but we'll see if volleyball can kind of keep compounding off of that and not, just drop back to one of the worst programs in the conference. It was very, very fun to be competitive last season. That game against St. Cloud State that they won, when was that? Against number 8 in the country, October 14th. They won 3-1 over the Huskies. And that was, of course, in Bemidji. That was one of the most exciting volleyball games I might have ever watched. So let's hope for more of that again this season.
Yeah. By the way, it was the best record Bemidji State had in 15 years.
15.
And 15. And again, some of these stats courtesy of bsubeavers.com, like this one, they were voted to finish 11th in the NSIC preseason coaches poll. It's the highest ranking in the preseason poll for the Beavers since also earning the 11th ranking in 2009. So again, going back 15 years for that one. So again, as we talked about before, on the other side of it, hey, don't look too much into the preseason polls. If you feel like the Beavers should have been higher, and now we got to say it this time, even though we feel like, hey, like that's momentum for the program. Like it's still a preseason coaches poll. You still have to go, play the matches and go do all that kind of stuff. But it's just a nice sign that like, hey, there could be a little bit of a bump up from where Bemidji State volleyball has historically been. And again, courtesy of bsubeavers.com, senior outside hitter Ashley Kroll tabbed the Beavers player to watch. She led the team in points, kills, and was second in service aces and digs a season ago. She finished 7th in the NSIC in service aces and 19th in points. So again, just a player to watch there, some to watch for this volleyball team. Again, like taking that next step up. We're not saying like you got to be competing like top 5 in the NSIC, but it's just more of like, can we see that natural progression of bouncing up into the 8 to 6 range of the conference? Can you go from that bottom tier and establish yourself as a team that's fully in that middle tier of teams in the conference?
Yeah, exactly. I that's what I would like for a lot of these programs that have, unfortunately been kind of bottom feeders, for better or for worse.
Just about a tough time
Bemidji's
breaking through.
Right. And there's a few programs here in Bemidji that have had a tough time staying at least somewhat relevant. And hopefully that's what we can see, from these programs over the next couple of years, is building on any sort of success, and hopefully compounding that into, maybe it takes 10 years, but slow and steady, get up there and stay competitive.
Right. Swinging back over into the women's soccer as we take a look into the athletic calendar. Tomorrow, August 21st, they play College of St. Benedict. I'm sure that's an exhibition. 5:00 tomorrow. So things are getting kind of real. Women's soccer does have a game at St. Catherine on August 24th. So not too far away from games actually happening. Some other things on the athletics calendar coming up the end of the week into the weekend. Women's golf is going to be doing some stuff at the at some golf tournaments here. They have the How Well Women's Athletics Golf Tournament. There's the 17th annual Ed Sar Golf Tournament as well. And then again, women's soccer, August 25th, they play St. Scholastica. And then football, August 29th. So here we go. Like things are kind of sneaking up quickly. Volleyball's first game of the season. They're going to Hawaii, so must be nice.
Yeah.
That's I'm trying to see if there's anything we're forgetting about, because obviously there's like cross country and stuff like that can kind of sneak up on you. We mentioned women's golf and things like that. Cross country begins on September 13th in Moorhead at the Dragon Twilight in Moorhead, obviously for that one. So like it or not, here we go. We're into the fall sports season. We're going to be breaking down games next week, which is crazy, but this was just our first, like, hey, we're back. Here's a little preview of some teams. and just kind of to get you primed up. So that way next week we're like right into it. We don't have to get through all the, hey, welcome back. How are you doing?
Right. This is a little bit more of a total season preview. Next week will be probably more of a let's talk about the games that are going to be happening a little bit more, because obviously football doesn't happen for another 9 days. We'll have a show next week before that game comes out, and then the first official soccer game is not until 2 weeks from now either. So we'll have some time in between then to actually talk more about some games, but this was just more of a little bit of a season preview for you.
Right. And we have a lot more content that we're going to come out throughout the season that we're really excited about. Me and Ian kind of spent some time over the summer and just talked about what we wanted the future of this podcast to be, and some ideas to kind of help grow and do some new things to get content out there. So look for that on social media. Our Twitter or X and Facebook streams are not for the foreseeable future going to be up on there due to the platform's rules. So you can watch the video version of this podcast as always on YouTube. And if anything, that's probably just the best way to watch it anyways. So go watch it on there. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and go follow the Beaver Banter page on X, go follow the Facebook page, the YouTube page, and we'll have updates there as well. Ian, I think we'll just end this podcast. Why don't you kick the Discord as we get ready for the new season?
Join the Discord, people. It is officially Beaver sports season again in 23 hours and 8 minutes. So let's go ahead and get everybody that wants to in the Beaver Banter Discord. You can find links to it on all of our social pages. It's great. Somebody just joined as we were recording this here today. So congrats to them for joining the Beaver Banter podcast Discord. And honestly, during the season, it's much more fun. The summer, for anybody who joined late last spring when we kind of just started it and got it up to the public, that's not really what it's normally like. Beaver sports are going to be kicking back up here. We'll get a lot more people chit-chatting again. It's going to be super fun. So let's get comfortable. Get in the Discord before it's too late. It will never be too late. The link is always active, but get in there right now.
Get in there and maximize your fun. That's really the big thing.
Exactly.
You can talk with us. You can ask us questions. I know we've wanted to do like mailbags and stuff like that where you guys can ask us questions, and we feel like the Discord is the best place to do that. So we're going to try and throughout the year eventually get a mailbag up, but the place to ask us the questions will be on the Discord. So if you're there, you'll find it. And heck, you can ask us questions anytime. And we'll, try and bring them up on the podcast, or at the very least talk with you about it in the Discord, which again, just a really, really cool place to do that. You can also, not only can you chat with me and Ian, you can also chat with Lucas of Beaver Territory. You can talk with Jared of the Bemidji Pioneer and a few other guys throughout Beaver Sports and NSIC and CCHA Media that are there and just talking about Beaver Sports, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's the place to be if you're a fan of Beaver athletics. And especially during hockey season, there seems to be a lot of hockey. We always do live game threads for all the hockey games. That's super fun. Definitely, if it grows in popularity, something we could do for football and soccer games. Maybe not every soccer game, maybe not every football game, but big ones for sure. If we know a lot of people are going to be watching, we'll do a live game thread for that. It's always super fun to have a condensed area to go back and look at, exciting nights.
Right. Because look, I go on Twitter and I say some Bemidji State stuff because I like talking about it. I like people to know, hey, what's Bemidji State up to? But you know what I mean? Like, you can just go there and it's for people who are like, yeah, like, let's talk some Bemidji State stuff. Was that a big third down? Was that a big, did they mess up the play call there? Did they, did they do a really good play call there? Like, it's just, again, just a really, really great spot to go and talk with people who are really into Bemidji State sports, and part of the reason we made this podcast is we just were always like, man, it feels like we want more places and avenues to talk about Bemidji State sports. And we wanted to make more of those. And this is a place where people can just get together and talk about it, because unless you know somebody or still are in communication with somebody who you went to school with, there's really nobody to talk Bemidji State sports, at least in like a clear, like platform to go do it, or like space. So this is what it's really cool. So go join the Discord, go join all of our other socials and talk. And here we are. We're back. The Beaver Banter podcast. I'm CJ Baumgartner. That's Ian Rivers.